Are we live? Yes. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to members and members of the public and those who are listening on YouTube. I'm Pauline Grove-Jones. I'll be chairing this meeting of the Development Committee. And for any one of you who hasn't attended one of these meetings before, the officers who provide and present our reports are the two who are presenting the reports will be shown on your screen. I think you have a beautiful view of James at the moment. And then the other two officers who are assisting me are...
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Philip Rosen. I'm the Assistant Director of Planning at North Norfolk.
Morning, everybody. My name is Noel Doran. I'm a solicitor and legal advisor to Development Committee this morning.
And we also have Linda Yaram, who is our, what's your proper title, Linda? I can never get it. Democratic Services Officer. And we also have Emma Denny, who is the Senior Democratic Service Officer. We will have to be prepared for a few glitches this morning, possibly, because this is new for us in Development Committee. They had a run through yesterday with overview and scrutiny, and I believe that went quite well. So we'll just have to see. And welcome to members of the public who have turned up to speak. Before we start the formal business, can I remind you that if the fire alarm goes off, this will not be a this is always one, isn't there? Well, you're going to get to that. A fire alarm will be a proper alarm. Just stay calm and follow the officers as they lead you out, and we will assemble either in front of the building in the car park or at the back by the memorial. Mobile phones. Could I ask that they be turned to silent or off, please? And can I remind members of the public, what's that? Not to, is that you? I don't know. Not to speak to members of the committee whilst we're in session, and until after we've finished the agenda. We will not be having a coffee break because there's no coffee to have a break for. If you wish to go out for a comfort session, would you please try and do it between the two agenda items? Because if you go out during the agenda item for any protracted length of time, you can't vote. I'm now going to remind you, because we've not had to think about this before. Members, you have 5 minutes to speak, whether you're speaking in support or whatever. So please don't go over time, because we don't want to hang around in here any longer than we actually have to. And I think you're going to time the members, please, Linda. And speakers, public speakers, you have 3 minutes. We time you. Linda is famous with her egg timer. It beeps when your time is up, and I will ask you to stop talking. I don't think there's anything more. Philip, do you want to say anything before we start?
Chairman, I'd just say, when members of the public are speaking and addressing, please use your microphones. We are working remotely, and also for members, please also use your microphones. If you can speak slowly, if someone hasn't quite heard what you're saying on the remote link, if there are questions, please be tolerant with us today. We're working through this as best we can. So if you can work in that way, we would all appreciate that. And I'm sure we can make sure that everyone has time to have their say today. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Philip. I think we can now go on to the main business. So to receive apologies for absence and details of any substitute members, please, Linda.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We have apologies this morning from Councillor Stockton with Councillor Toy as substitute, and also an apology from Adam Varley.
The minutes, I believe you had another, Linda sent them round again. I always like that because I think they tend to get lost if they're supplied a week or so previously. I'm not going to go through them page by page. I'm assuming, because you are my committee, that you've read it through. Are there any problems with them? Can we have somebody to approve, please? So whoever, Richard and Angie, could we have a show of hands? Thank you. That's unanimous. Items of urgent business. I haven't any. Does anybody else have any?
None to add, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. The order of the business will stay as it stands. So there's no difference with that. Declarations of interests, as you realise, we have this new regime. And so if you have any pecuniary interest, please tell me. Yes, Councillor Toy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Although I'm substituting on the committee today, I'm also representing item 8 as the local member, and I find I'm predetermined to the outcome and therefore will abstain from voting on that item.
Thank you, that's noted. We now go to the officer's report. So pages 3 to 16, item number 7, Sheringham, PF/21/0405, and it is being presented by Russell Stock. Before we start, Russell, you've disappeared on my screen. I've got.
I think I need to speak, and yep, there I am.
Just to say welcome. Russell is our new senior planning officer, and this is his first planning meeting with us. Oh God, I got sniffs, sneezes. And so welcome, Russell, and I look forward to working with you over the coming years.
Thank you.
Not months, years. Right, if you'd like to start then, and your presentation for Sheringham.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. So this application seeks temporary permission for the siting of a shipping container to store water sports equipment in association with a stand-up paddleboard hire business. The temporary permission sought would run from April through September this year and next. The application site is located on the seaward edge of the Sheringham Promenade in front of the covered seating below the Marble Arch. The site falls within the settlement boundary of Sheringham, as well as within the designated areas of public realm and open land area. The site also falls within the setting of the Norfolk Coast Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty and the Sheringham Conservation Area. It is understood that the business was created last year and operated from this location using a shack on wheels, which was brought to the site when it was being used and open. Whilst it is understood that the applicant would like to be able to store the water sports equipment on a more permanent basis, the business and functional requirements to permanently store this equipment has not been demonstrated. The main issue of concern with the proposals, as detailed within the report, relate to the impact of the siting of the shipping container within the area of designated public space. Such areas are afforded protection under local plan policies EN5 and CT1, and consideration of this matter can be found on pages 10 and 11 of the agenda. Comments relating to the landscape and design issues, including key views and the appearance of the container, can be found on pages 11 to 13, and a few photos of the application site are shown within the presentation. Comments relating to the impact upon the significance of the Sheringham Conservation Area are found on pages 13 and 14. As set out within the report, it is considered that the harms identified would outweigh the benefits associated with the development. And for the reasons set out on page 16 of the agenda, the application is recommended for refusal. I'd be happy to answer any questions should you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Russell. Are we showing any of the pictures up here?
Chairman, my understanding is that the officers are presenting on the understanding that members have all received their presentation pack.
Is that-
If there are any particular plans or photographs that members would find useful, and then officers will be happy to present those and share screens during the debate.
Thank you. Is that okay, everybody? Right. Sorry, I keep forgetting this. Thank you, Angie. I now pass to the Town Council representative. Mr. Pegg, are you here? If you'd like to come up. I don't think we need to tell you how this works, but just, can you remember from a year ago?
Thanks very much. Okay, good morning. My name is Stephen Pegg. I'm Chair of Sheringham Town Council Planning Committee. I would like to take this opportunity to make it very clear to Development Committee members they should be under no doubt that Sheringham Town Council objects in the strongest possible terms to this application. When it was discussed at Sheringham Town Council Planning Committee, it was a unanimous decision to object to this application. There are two ways of looking at this application. Firstly, the scientific and rational way. For a detailed list of the planning policies that this application contravenes, please refer to your office's comprehensive report. Your planning officer must be congratulated for identifying all the planning policies which this application fails to meet. I do not want to repeat the long list here, but would like to just emphasize the following. Firstly, paragraph 196 of the NPPF. Secondly, EN5 of the local plan, public realm. Thirdly, EN2 of the local plan, protection and enhancement of landscape and settlement character. Lastly, CT1 open space designation. If this application is to be decided purely on planning policy grounds, then the decision is pretty clear cut. However, there is an additional way to look at this application, the way that the man or woman on the Sheringham High Street will see it, or the way that the visit to the town will see it, the layman's view. They will see it simply, purely as a blot on the landscape. It is proposed to site the shipping container on the seaward side of the prom. It will stick out like the proverbial sore thumb, blocking views in all directions. There must surely be more suitable locations for a shipping container. I would urge the applicant to engage with Sheringham Town Council in order to find one. Ultimately, this application is all about deciding between harm caused to, firstly, Sheringham Conservation Area, secondly, the public realm, thirdly, the open space, and finally, the landscape and settlement character, versus any public benefit accruing from the shipping container. True, it might benefit the business, but the rest of the public will not benefit at all. Thank you.
I have no objectors. Are we ready now, Emma? Now we have a supporting speaker, Mr. Gray. If you'd like to come up, please. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Gray, from the time you start speaking.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Lewis Gray. I run said water sports business on the seafront in Sheringham. So firstly, thank you for everyone for having me here. That's really appreciated. I just wanted to go over a few things. Basically, I understand where Mr. Pegg is coming from, and I don't think it was outlined right in the beginning of the application that I'm fully aware that it will be seen as a blot on the seafront, but I am more than willing to work with the council to make it more attractive, more fitting in with the local area. That's not a problem. I myself am a carpenter. My business partner is a carpenter. We can work something around that. That's not a problem at all. from the business point of view, there was no alternative position that would be suitable for the container. A couple were suggested, one being the turning circle for the RNLI lifeboat station, which wouldn't work because the cars then wouldn't be able to turn around and leave again. One of which was the RNLI car park at the top of the top near the Lees. This again wouldn't work due to the fact that I think one of the subjects in our agreement with the council was that we keep an eye out on everyone who's using our equipment in the water. I myself am part of the RNLI. We have lifeguard trained personnel who work for us. And this just wouldn't be possible from the top car park. And in the benefit of the lifeguards, we wouldn't want to put any more work their way. They're very busy as it is anyway. The container itself, like I say, I'm more than happy to work on and make it more fitting for the area. It needed to, the reason we suggested a container was because it needed to be a certain size to fit our equipment in, and the container was the only viable option we could see at the time. The positioning, it doesn't take up the main prom where it is, so there's still, or where it would be, so there's still access for emergency vehicles, people walking up and down the prom, and it wouldn't hinder anything like that at all. And in terms of the way the application will be seen in the layman's eye, as Mr. Pegg put it. Sorry. Okay, no problem. No problem. Thank you.
Now, the local member is Councillor Willington, who is unable to be with us today. She's unwell, but she has provided a written statement, which our splendid Philip will now read out.
I'm not sure I can live up to the billing, Chairman. I'll see what I can do. Members, you'll see obviously there is a lengthy commentary from Councillor Willington in your report pack on pages 4 and 5. Those were the comments that Councillor Willington gave when calling in the application. I'm pleased in today's circumstances to have those fully reported to you, so you can see a detailed consideration from Councillor Willington. Councillor Withington's apologies have been received this morning. She says, "Good morning, Chair, members and members of the public. My apologies for being unexpectedly not being able to attend this meeting today. Although you have my comments in regard to this application in the papers, I would like to offer the following explanation as to why I called this in. This application has been very controversial, and I received many emails, telephone calls, and comments in regard to both sides of this discussion. It would seem that this application may also determine precedents for future uses on the promenade areas in Sheringham. Therefore, I felt it was important that the decision was considered on planning merits in an objective, open and transparent arena. Apologies again, Liz." Thank you, Chairman.
Right, so now I'm going to hand over to members. Has anybody a comment to make, please? Right, Councillor Brown and Councillor Fitztillett. Councillor Brown first, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to raise a point of clarification, if I may. We have heard that the site is within the conservation area, but as I look at the graphic on page 5 of the information sheet, pack, I see a grey boundary line extending into the town with some large dots within it, which I think designates the conservation area. So the site of this application is actually not within the conservation area. And I took the trouble to confirm this with the conservation team. So I just wanted to raise this as an issue so that members were aware of this anomaly, as it were, in that the conservation area doesn't extend as far as the boundary of the settlement of Sheringham, which is also delineated with a thick black line on the graphic. So I just wanted to raise that and ask if Mr. Stock, the officer, if in fact he agrees with me on this, just to clarify what we're looking at and the criteria that we're applying to this application. So if I may raise that with you, Madam Chairman, and reserve the right to comment further as this matter is debated. Thank you.
Can I just ask, is that right? Can Councillor Brown reserve the right to comment afterwards because he's not the local member? Okay. I'll let you. Russell, I know that you did make a comment in your application, in your presentation, written presentation about this conservation area. If you'd just like to reply to Councillor Brown.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, so Councillor Brown is correct. The application site lies outside of the Sheringham conservation area. That image that he showed, sort of referred to on page 5 is correct. That's the current boundary. So it lies outside of it. I think it's 16 meters from the conservation area itself. That's set out on page 13 of the agenda. The concerns are in relation, as set out in the report, to the impact on the setting and the significance of that conservation area.
Thank you, Russell. Is that okay, Andrew? It is on page 13 or what page is it, 13?
Yes, Madam Chairman, that's fine. It's just, although the site is within the shadow of the conservation area, so to speak, I just wanted to establish this so that we weren't making considerations on the basis that it was within the conservation area when in fact it isn't. So it's purely a point of clarification, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a very difficult one, isn't it? Maybe I should declare an interest because, as you probably all know, I am very much involved with water sports, and a very long time ago actually used to water ski off Sheringham, but we kept all equipment off site and took it down to the beach when we needed to. There's all sorts of things that are saying we shouldn't be doing this under planning objections, but really I think with what's been happening with COVID recently, the fact that people can go outdoors, the fact that they can be relatively free, I think human rights come into this, because I think they should be able to do this. Now, I do agree that putting that particular container where it is a problem, but there is really nowhere else. And one must bear in mind that these paddle boarders do actually need to be within sight of the lifeguards. So either we turn it down, which is going to make life very difficult for these people because they're having to take their equipment on and off the whole time. And right, we had a boat on a trailer, so we could shove everything in it and it wasn't too difficult. But to actually have a whole load of paddleboards, which are a lot bigger than water skis, for example, is going to restrict his activity. And I think it's a huge tourist offer. I really do. But I'm not going to vote on it because I've got my planning hat on today. But I just want to say some things that people might like to take into consideration.
Thank you. I think this has actually been presented by Russell in his report about the benefits of exercise, etc. But as we've said, Councillor Fitch-Tillett, we have to set that aside. We are looking at this from a planning aspect, okay? So we're looking at it as putting a container, which is it 16 metres long? I don't quite know. 6 metres, oh God, that would take up the whole. 6 metres, thank you, Richard. So anyway, now I go to Councillor Heinrich.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As I've already said, it's a difficult one. What I see here is we have a business that was able to operate last year in a slightly different form. And while I can understand the need to expand, and the wish to expand, I'm not convinced that a permanent container, or semi-permanent container down on the seafront is ideal. The idea that there are similar things on Cromer seafront, I think is irrelevant because Cromer seafront is much wider. We're dealing with a very constrained area in Sheringham. I'd like to support small business as much as possible, but we can't do that at the expense of damaging the landscape and other aspects of tourism. What we'd have with this is a very ugly container in a prominent position. Doesn't matter what colour you paint it or what cladding you put on, it's still a container and it's still in an awkward and ugly position. We've had a very good and well-balanced and very thorough officers' report this morning, and I think it analyses all the issues, both for and against, extremely well. I'm therefore going to propose that we accept the officer's recommendation to refuse. Thank you.
Councillor Lloyd, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to turn this blooming thing on. Apologies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a lot of sympathy with this applicant, actually. I mean, they're trying to make a go of it in North Norfolk. Benefits to health and being outside and all that sort of exercise stuff is really good. I'm just really disappointed that it's a container, to be honest with you. I mean, if there was some mitigation in there for the fact that it's a shipping container, and it's very difficult to tart that up, to be honest with you. So it is a difficult one, and I agree with the last two speakers, and I've got a heavy heart. I'll wait until I hear other speakers, but to reserve my decision. Thanks.
Councillor Kershaw.
Thank you, Chair. From the economic development point of view, which is my portfolio, I can see why this is being proposed. But sad to say, I think it's the right business in the wrong place. And we have a lot of coast, and I'm sorry to say, it would be such a blot on the landscape on an open promenade that I will vote with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
So you're seconding. Right. Can I just point out that this is a shipping container. This is what we're voting on. We're not voting on whether it's a healthy business, etc. We welcome businesses. This is where we are in a cleft stick to a certain extent, because we think that Mr. Gray has a good proposition. It's something that we would like to see at the seafront. But it is the fact that we are not voting on that. So has anybody else any desire to speak at the moment? Yes, Councillor Pearce. Richard, are you not working? Oh, go. I don't think you can take that, but is that working? I
Want
said
to-
we'd have a glitch, didn't I?
Yeah, we got a glitch. Yeah, I can see obviously because it was sent to me in there in for the consultation. I put my views already in there because they're in print. I know it contravenes, this application does contravene a lot of regulation and statutes, etc. That's core to our period of method of operation. But I think after COVID, after what is we know and we expect is going to come, it is a new business. As my learned member in front of me, as chairman of the economic section, it is an economic benefit. It's a temporary situation. It's not as if you've got to drill through the promenade. It can be put in, it can be removed. I think it's a novel use of the coastline when we are expecting a heavy tourist season, and this may continue for a couple of years. If we were to permit maybe a single year, we could then get together with the vendor owner, who this morning has shown himself to be a progressive applicant in the sense that he wants to work with us. I think maybe something could be done for the future. But I also think supporting that if we don't allow it for the first time, what kind of a future is the gentleman going to have? Nobody likes containers, but I think at the same time, we have to look at the fact that the gentleman is trying to do something, cutting down on his own cost to see if it's viable. And I think that needs to be applauded. I understand also with my other gentleman behind me, Mr. Lloyd, that it is a shipping container and they are very difficult to tart up. But surely can't we give him some help? Because we're crying out for investment, we're crying out for small businesses, we're crying out for local development, and we're going to have a very, very busy tourist season. And we need to enhance what we have to our fullest capability. So my views haven't changed. I will be voting against the recommendation. Thank you.
Anybody else? Andrew, can you just hold on a second, please? Mr. Gray, can I just ask you something? How are you going to get this container down onto the promenade and up again? Thank you. You wish to come back, Andrew? I did say you could.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I think Mr. Gray is to be applauded for bringing a facility into Sheringham to satisfy a demand from our visitors and to promote tourism in the town, which is obviously very important to Sheringham in itself. And I do have some reservations, however, about the application. We have to consider the public realm aspect. That is what we are here to do as a planning authority for the district. So it's unfortunately for me not going to be an application that I'm minded to support. So I will be voting for the officer's recommendation. But in so doing, I do hope that we can work with Mr. Gray as an authority to hopefully find some alternative premises or an alternative arrangement that will work better for Mr. Gray moving forward so that we can support him in his business venture for the benefit of the community. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Andrew, for a sensible comment there. Now we now go to the vote. We're going to do it as we did on Zoom, a roll call. So who's calling out? Linda, if you'd like to call the names. Are we alphabetical? If you could then please say for, against, or abstain. So before we start, I have a proposer to support the officer's recommendation for refusal as on page 16. Councillor Heinrich is proposing, and it's seconded by Councillor Kershaw. If we could now pass to the vote.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Brown. Councillor Cushing,
Against.
Councillor Fisher,
Shout, Peter.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett, Councillor Fredericks, Councillor Grove-Jones,
For.
Councillor Heinrich,
4.
Councillor Kershaw,
4.
Councillor Lloyd,
4.
Councillor Mancini-Boyle,
A heavy heart for.
Councillor Pearce,
Against.
Councillor Toy.
4, and hope that we can do something better in the future. Thank you.
Right. Yes.
That's
Let me just
9
get them.
for, 2 against with 1 abstention.
Thank you. Philip wants to say something now.
Chairman, members of the public, it's very clear that there are significant concerns from the local community, both to support this business and also to get any development on that sensitive site right. I'll be very pleased to speak with our officers, with the applicant, to review alternatives that they may have to mitigate this scheme, and also to include the town council in those discussions. I think it's important that we enter into some form of mediation and that we find the right place, the right design, the right development to allow the town and the business to thrive. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and I agree. I'm sorry we've refused this under the planning situation, Mr. Gray, but we are all for your business. It's just the container, etc. So I think there will be quite a lot of discussion in the next week or 2 or whatever before you start. So thank you for coming in, and thank you, Russell, for your contributions. And
I'm working now.
Yeah, fine.
Oh, mine is now.
Hang on, no, you try yours.
I can try, mine still works when yours is on.
Mine's now
Now
working.
that's interesting, isn't it? So we're all going to have to, it's not fingers crossed.
Straight.
those of you, any members of the public who are listening in, please be aware that we are glitching here. So we can't turn you off. You'll have to listen to us trying to work out what's happening with our mic.
You might find out that if they're on. When Angie had hers on, I couldn't work, but
Right, we now go on to the second of our applications. Page 17, Walterton, PS /20/2072, and the presentation is by Officer Watson, who I can't see. I've still got Russell Stock. How do we get?
That's if I speak, it'll come on.
There we go.
Yeah.
My goodness, huge. How lovely to see you.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Am I okay to start? Yeah, this application is for as amended, is for a single-storey dwelling with accommodation in the roof space and an attached garage. The site sits at the entrance to a complex of converted barns known as Park Farm Barns off the west side of the Itteringham Matlask Road and facing Wall Road, as shown on the site location in the presentation pack. It's within the area designated as countryside and within the Mannington and Wolston conservation area. The site is currently occupied. Sorry, can you hear me okay, Chair? The site is currently occupied by a porter cabin used as an office, with the remainder of the site used for storage of materials and equipment in association with a building business. It is understood the porter cabin has been on the site since approximately 2003 and was first used as a site office during the conversion of the nearby barns, but there was never a building on the site prior to that. As set out in the planning history, a certificate of lawfulness was granted in 2013 for the porter cabin and the land around it for storage, etc., associated with the building and development business. A further certificate of lawfulness was granted last year relating to the porter cabin only and its use as an office. As the report sets out, there's extant permission to convert the porter cabin office building to a dwelling. The report explains on page 19 that this is permitted development with prior approval given in June last year. It's important to note, however, that this only relates to the building itself and does not include the remainder of the current application site. The approved plans for the conversion are in the presentation pack. The main issue in this case is whether the development is acceptable in principle. The site is within the area designated as countryside under the policy SS1, which sets out the district spatial strategy. Policy SS2 specifically restricts new market dwellings as proposed to encourage sustainable patterns of development and to protect the intrinsic character of the countryside. The site is in a location some distance away from the nearest settlements with a range of everyday services, which can only be reached by car. The proposal would therefore not be sustainable development, as this type of dispersed development increasing the need to travel fails to address the impacts of climate change. The erection of a dwelling in this location would be a clear departure from both development plan policies and contrary to national planning guidance. As we know, applications must be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise, which in this case is whether they would outweigh the conflict with policies SS1 and SS2. The material considerations in this case are explained on pages 26 to 28 of the report, so I'll not go through them again now, other than the fact that one of them is the fallback position, i.e. the fact that the porter cabin office could be converted to a dwelling. As referred to earlier, though, it's only the building itself that could be converted, not the remainder and the significantly larger part of the site. Officers also consider it is unlikely that the permitted scheme would be implemented and if this current application is refused, and no evidence has been submitted by the applicant to suggest it would. Whilst the proposed development is acceptable in terms of its design, effect on the character and appearance of the conservation area, living conditions and highway safety, it is unacceptable in principle and contrary to policies SS1 and SS2. You'll note there's been a previous refusal for dwellings on this site in 2017. Some of the material considerations do weigh in favour of the proposal, but officers consider these as not such weight that the proposal should be approved. The recommendation is therefore for refusal for the reasons set out on pages 28 and 29 of the report. And that's the end of my presentation. If there's any questions on the report or the presentation pack, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Darryl. Has anybody any comments for Darryl before I go to members? No, right, okay. We have no parish speaker. We have no objector, but we do have a supporter, Mr. Gray McNamara, or Guy McNamara. I do apologise. Was it Gray or Guy? Guy, if you'd like to come up, please.
Morning, everybody.
3 minutes from when you start speaking.
Thank you. Dear Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to address you today on behalf of the applicants in support of this application. Your officers have already granted approval for the creation of a new dwelling on the site, confirming the conversion of the existing building could go ahead under permitted development rights. The principle of dwelling on this site is established. We have worked hard to amend the scheme to address the points of objection raised by your technical consultees. There are now no objections to the scheme from the Conservation Officer, the Landscape Officer, or the Highways Officer. Immediate neighbours have expressed support for the proposals. We also have considerable support from residents around Park Farm, including the owners of the adjacent Waterton Park estate. So we are disappointed by the officer's recommendation to refuse the application. Yes, the proposed dwelling is larger than the approved conversion scheme. However, it is about the same size as the smallest building on the site and is considered to be sympathetic in design and much more in keeping with the surrounding dwellings than would be the approved conversion of the existing building. Your officer's report states that it is considered that the proposal would respect the character of the existing development, and whilst it will be of a large scale than the Portakabin, its design and appearance would be more appropriate and result in an enhancement to the character and the appearance of the conservation area. Your officer report therefore finds no actual harm from the proposals and in fact draws positive conclusions. It is also concluded there will be no material impacts of the living conditions of the neighbouring residents. We are confused by your officer's comment that the approved permitted development scheme has no weight in the decision making as it questions the intention of the applicant to go ahead with that scheme. This is not the case. We have every intention of regenerating the site. The office and compound are redundant for our business. There is no longer a need for its current use. We renovated Park Farmhouse and converted the 5 barns to a high quality and want to complete this earlier homestead with a dwelling in keeping with the site, rather than be forced into the delivery of a property of no architectural merit. Planning case law has clearly acknowledged such matters as material considerations in the determination of planning applications. In conclusion, the principles of a new dwelling on this site is established. The proposed dwelling represents an attractive and sympathetic proposal with significant benefits over the approved building, and we therefore ask for your support in approving the application. Thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you, Mr. McNamara. If you'd like to return to your seat.
Thank you.
I now ask the local member, Councillor Toy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank Officer Watson for his report. I know it takes considerable effort to bring these reports together. Whilst I understand his arguments in conclusion, I would like to put to the committee there may be an alternative balance. Where this property would sit, whilst in the countryside, is also a space or infill on the overall site. The space is already used for office duties, therefore we already have vehicle movements and human activity going on the site, also used for storage. Whilst I accept the officer's comments around the extent use of the site and the square meterage comparisons, it would also be argued that the rest of the area currently used for storage would become garden and would therefore benefit wildlife and biodiversity. Undeniably, there is an extent use. If the property was developed within the current extent permission, when the outcome would, I feel, not sit well in its surroundings and the content and the context of the development location. This final proposal before you today sits with the conservation design as doing no harm. There is a volume of local support for the plan and we cannot ignore that. If we look at the list of policies, out of the list, we come down to the question of SS1 and SS2. All other policies have been satisfied. Additionally, the MPPF paragraph 78, where there are groups of smaller settlements, development in one village may support services in a nearby village. In rural terms, this application sits between several other locations that do have facilities, including Itteringham Pub and Shop, Aldborough Pub, Shop and Garage, community facilities, Erpingham Pub and excellent sports facilities with its moga. All these built facilities obviously by people from surrounding areas, and they're no further than someone travelling across a town to a sports facility or pub as they would currently do in a car in built up areas. Paragraph 79 of the MPPF, planning policies and decisions should avoid the development of isolated homes in the countryside unless one or more of the following circumstances apply. Would significantly enhance its immediate setting and be sensitive to the defining character of the local area. This application, I believe, would be a significant enhancement to that already there. SS1 and SS2 are strategies, and I believe they are good strategies to protect our countryside. But I'm also happy to acknowledge that they will not fit all occasions, and I believe that this is one of those occasions where we need to apply a sensible approach and acknowledge what locals, who I represent, think and what is appropriate for this space. We have an infill on a site that is not in open countryside, but within the walled compound of the development on a piece of land that has extent permission for development and is in use. It is well designed, appropriate for the space, and additionally, I believe it will be an enhancement of the current view with improved wildlife capacity and potentially less traffic movements. I hope you can see a way to reconsider the balance and approve this application. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Toy. Philip wishes to speak.
Chairman, you sort of caught me slightly off guard there. We had a discussion. You suggested that maybe the officer's presentation was a little muffled in terms of the audio. So I'm going to speak and I'll recap on the highlights, the main considerations. I wasn't seeking to speak, so it's at the chair's request if members can be clear.
I found the presentation a bit muffled. I don't know if anybody else did. It's probably because I'm ancient and years ago. Just
We'll work on that, members of the public. So where we stand, Chairman, in this application is for a new dwelling in the countryside. As you've heard from everybody, the key policies are strategic ones here, SS1 and SS2. To depart from those policies, we need good material reasons to do so. In this circumstance, officers acknowledge and are aware that there is a long-standing use of this site. A certificate of lawfulness has been granted for the conversion of the porter cabin, excuse me for the trade name, being located on this site. Officers take a stern view in terms of the extent of that conversion because the certificate of lawfulness is considered to relate solely to the footprint of that building. There is no curtilage associated with that building. And therefore, when officers measure that issue through the fallback position, helpfully underlined today has been one which we can expect to come forward. So that's a positive change from the report. But in any event, you will see that if that was to come forward, the conversion of the porter cabin is a fallback position which we feel is more acceptable in policy terms and more acceptable in the wider sphere, because we will not be dealing with a significant curtilage or large-scale new building being created in policy terms. So, Chairman, hopefully that's the highlights. Hopefully that shows members where the officer's comment was coming from. I know Darryl prepared carefully. I'm sorry that you were thwarted a little by the technology this morning, Darryl. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I now go to members, and my first port of call is Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think, once again, it's like the other application we had, it's very complex. But I think, including Philip himself, all the speakers so far, our local member and the applicant, have detailed finally the pros and the cons for this. And I come down once again to economic benefit. I think that is a plus. I think also the fact that we need to be seen as a progressive council is very, very important. And whilst it might technically say it's in the countryside, it's in the self-encased enclave, I think the application itself deals with many aspects that you would be hard to find elsewhere. We are a largely countryside, rural constituency council, whatever you want to call us. People do live out from towns and villages. I think they're allowed to have, in this day and age, a business at home. I think that they want to be progressive. And I think, above all, that I think this is another very good application. And I understand the reasons for the officer's refusal, but obviously planning is a matter of opinion and interpretation. I think the good slightly outweighs the potential harm. So therefore, and SS1 and SS2 has been detailed, our strategic policies. And I think we have in the past been very sensible and gone against them. This isn't a massive development. It's part of a situation that is already there, and I think it enhances. So I personally, Madam Chairman, would propose that we go against the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Heinrich.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I'm also in two minds about this one. I can see the arguments in favour of it, in that it completes this development, it gets rid of a storage yard. However, we are still looking at a very isolated location. Now, albeit there are shops in neighbouring villages, they are not in a sensible walking distance down country lanes. And we have to bear that in mind. We know it's in part of a development of former barns and other farm buildings, which were converted under different regulations. So that's always being. There was also, we had a very similar application not that long ago for a various barn conversions, and there the site had previously had a house on it. So I don't see much difference in precedent between that and the fact that this porter cabin could be developed. The house is very nice, but it's again, it's open market. It's not as if we're looking at a rural exception site. Madam Chair, we've always attempted to uphold our SS1, SS2 policies, and I think reluctantly I would propose we go with the officer's recommendation on this one. Thank you.
You're proposing accepting the officer's recommendation, Paul?
That's correct, Chairman.
Just bear with me a second, because a bit like Chinese whispers here, there's a whisper going from one to the other here, and neither of them can hear.
Just to remind the committee, as a matter of law, you are required to take a decision in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. And so if you're going to go against the officer's recommendation, material considerations have to indicate an alternative to the development plan.
Thank you. Councillor Lloyd and then Councillor Fish.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's quite clear that there's going to be additional vehicle movements because of this. You know, this property goes ahead and is inhabited. I'm going to speak up for climate change here. I think this, firstly, it is in the countryside, it contravenes those policies. So I was looking for some mitigations to that in this report. And I'm not actually seeing any. I'm not seeing anything about mitigating car use with electric vehicles, charging points. I'm not seeing anything about renewable energy. I'm not seeing anything about renewable forms of sustainable heating in this property. So with the papers that I'm looking at in front of me here, I just don't see enough to go against the officer's recommendation in this case.
Are you seconding Councillor Lloyd?
Yes, I will. Thanks.
Councillor Kershaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of things. The discussion on the brownfield site, I don't believe this is a brownfield site, personally, looking at the details. And the replacement dwelling, following on from what Councillor Heinrich said, we recently discussed a building that had been developed, and there had been a farmhouse on that site, actually owned by the council, which had been demolished. And that also was close to a railway station, a school, and a public house. For me, this is building in the countryside, and I think it would be unwise to break the strategy in this particular case. Thank you.
Tillett, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to endorse the comments, particularly of Councillor Lloyd. I think we have to wake up to climate change. I think we have to be responsible. We have to stop cars from driving that. For example, during lockdown, CO2 emissions fell down dramatically. So we have to help with that. Climate change is here. We see evidence of it all along my beloved coast, for example. So anything we can do to stop additional vehicular movements has to be good. And I also do not want any more bricks and mortar put in our countryside. Thank you very much.
Oh, you won't like the government's 300,000 houses then. Say that talking about climate change, this is just a general comment here, and I'm going to say this. And using cars, driving backwards and forwards, having meetings in council offices, etc., we are contravening our own policies in that we say that people should be using, should not be using petrol cars, etc., etc. And the majority of us here will have petrol or diesel cars. So that's that. And just to also point out, as Councillor Heinrich stressed, the barn conversions come under different classification and legislation from this particular application for the porter cabin. You will have seen on page 24 of your pack the approved plans for the porter cabin to be converted into a bedroom, living room, bathroom and kitchen. So they could actually build that one. They could actually convert that. But there we go. So now I have a proposition. Anybody else wish to speak? Have we stopped here? So I have a proposer, Councillor Heinrich, to go with the officer's recommendation as set out on page 28 and 29 to refuse this application under the following the reasons given, and it's seconded by Councillor Nigel Lloyd. We will now go to the vote, which will be roll call again. Linda, would you like to start?
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
4.
Councillor Cushing.
4.
Councillor Fisher.
4.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
4.
Councillor Fredericks.
4.
Councillor Grove-Jones.
4.
Councillor Heinrich.
4.
Councillor Kershaw.
4.
Councillor Lloyd.
4.
Councillor Mancini-Boyle.
4.
Councillor Pearce.
Against.
Councillor Toy.
Abstain.
Thank you. So that's 10 in favour, 1 against with 1 abstention.
Thank you. Da-da-da. Philip is about to give us the rundown on what's going on here.
Chairman, as the only hen at home today, I will give you the appeal statements. Pleasure to be with you all, I must say. It's good to be here in person. I know it's difficult, but good to see you all. So in terms of the appeals, you can see on page 31, we've got a number of new appeals spread across the district. If members have any queries on those new appeals, I'll be happy to take any questions. Alternatively, if ward members want to approach me in email, I'll be happy to pick those emails up. Any queries on the new appeals received? All written representations, I'm pleased to say. So looking through the inquiries and hearings, I've come up with a new word, Chairman. We're looking at the Ale Merton case, Bristol, Holt, the Gladman public inquiry. I regret to say, after much pressing from officers, we still do not have a decision. As soon as we do have a decision, I will make sure that members of the Development Committee are updated by the case officer, Jeff Lyon, and that we will review our position on housing land supply with the lead on plan policy. Also, you will be briefed on any implications that relate to future determination of applications. Very significant case for us. Clyde next the sea at Arcady. We are currently in an application coming towards the end of the consultation period. You'll be pleased to hear, members, that will be reported directly to you for a decision at this committee. I feel it's important that you hear that case and that you can balance those local concerns and the wider material planning merits of the case. At Itteringham, I'm sorry to report we still don't have a decision. We appear to be a little over time. That was the retention of an annex that was being used as a single residential dwelling. It was an enforcement public inquiry. At North Walsham, we are currently awaiting the determination of the planning application at the Bluebird Container Storage Unit at Laundry Loke. My expectation is that officers will be making all reasonable efforts to bring that case to a conclusion, and obviously engaging with the local ward member as we do so. At Ryborough, we have an informal hearing for a replacement roof. This is an enforcement case that relates to progression of works without planning permission. Members, if you have any further questions on those cases, I'll be pleased to hear them.
Here is, first of all, Andrew and then Nigel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on the appeal on Holt, do we have any indication from the planning inspector what the timeline is for a decision on this?
The end of April, Chairman.
The end of April 2022.
This year.
Whenever.
We don't have a further new date. We will keep pressing for dates. Our officers remain checking those cases, but at the moment, nothing.
And also for the record, Madam Chair, through you, if I may ask Mr. Olsen what the proposal is for the Arcady application coming before this committee. Will that be next month or will it be a later meeting, if I may ask?
Through you, Chairman, there are a number of local concerns raising issues that relate to design, landscape, matters of principle. I think it's right that the applicant has an opportunity to respond to those comments and make any amendments that they feel should be made. Our consultation process finishes tomorrow. So I should have all consultations in, and what I'll be doing is I'll be drawing those consultations together. I'll be contacting the applicant, and the applicant will have an opportunity to address those issues in any way they wish. The likelihood is that it will be a July committee meeting that would give them the opportunity to consider those comments and respond in any detailed way. We would also, obviously, in terms of any amendments, need to reconsult on the amendments, but it feels right, Chairman, to give the applicant an opportunity to respond in some detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Richard. Yes. But on the North Walsham one, when I drive past there, I notice that the main reason for bringing this to the appeal process seems to have been dealt with. I just wonder, is this a process that can't stop because it started, or has the applicant insisted that we carry on? I just wondered if you could share that with me anyway.
Through you, Chairman, and for the benefit of the wider committee. We had an unauthorised development. By making a planning application, it gives an opportunity to consider the mitigation that can be given to the development. I believe that the officers of the applicant are working on that mitigation. I don't want to determine the outcomes of that, but I'm hopeful that the predisposition is to support and to seek appropriate mitigation. You'll be kept informed, Nigel, as we move forward. Okay, Chairman, moving on to written representations cases in hand. I'll take those as you see them in the agenda. Members, is there any comment you would like to make on those cases? Any questions you would like to raise?
Yes, Stalham, I did have Bob Rowe on the, perhaps it Bob, is it Bob Rowe? Bob. I forgot his name. Bob Wade. Well, it was a W in it somewhere, wasn't there? I mean, I did get that right. Bob Wade spoke to me yesterday about Lucinda House and the detached dwelling, and he was more concerned as enforcement regarding the development of Stalham Fen opposite the house. The proposer for the new dwelling was told that he could not build on that piece of land, and Bob could see no problem with the conversion of the stables. So it's still back to a single story detached dwelling and garage at Lucinda House, and we'll just have to see what happens there. I think it's up for refusal. So this dwelling.
We'll await the outcome from the planning inspectorate, Chairman. It was remiss of me, members. I've been keeping you updated on the archery and air rifle range out at Holt Woodland. I'll be out there this afternoon with the planning inspector. So we will be able to hopefully.
Yeah.
Health and safety, Gerard. Health and safety. Very much not, Chairman, but we will look forward to the inspector's visit. This has been a very long time, and I will press the inspector for the earliest possible decision on this case. It's important that the user of that site is able to move forward and that the council are able to move forward as well. We will bring a report if the council's case is upheld that will relate to the expediency of the enforcement of that case for you as members of the Development Committee to consider. Thank you. So looking at the appeal decisions, you'll recall, members, we had two cases for our Kiva Communications out at Wiverton. This is in some parts good and in some parts bad. Clearly the bad is that the inspector was not convinced of the council's case on landscape harm. Very frustrating. The good part of it, though, members, is that the inspector was very much convinced of the requirement for enforcement action in the first place. They upheld the council's considerations that an application was in fact required for the additional mounted antenna to go on that site. They upheld the council's position that was given by Council relating to the existing permission for the existing antenna on site. Less good. They did not agree with our material weighting. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to argue with a planning inspector and their weighting. I can't find any technical flaw, although I don't agree for one moment with their weighting of the landscape impact. You may also note, Chairman, that the council defended robustly a claim for costs that was not awarded.
Anybody, any questions on those appeals? No, no. Well, everybody's disappointed with Witherton. I mean, that really was, but still, there we go. Now, item 10, any other urgent business? No, not as far as I know. Exclusion of press and public, item 11, item 12, no private business and no exempt matters, 13. So that concludes our meeting. Can I just say that it's all gone really quite well, considering that we've not done this before, and with just the small